Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the latest in the Yannick Nézet-Séguin recording of the Sibelius Symphony Cycle. Well, yeah, with his own Orchestre Métropolitain. They've shortened it. Isn't that nice? Usually French orchestras have, Orchestre de la Grande Division Radio de la Cité de Paris de Well, and this used to be Orchestre Métropolitain de Montréal, as it says on the front, but on the back it just says Orchestre Métropolitain. Yeah, they're getting there. So soon it's going to be Orchestre Met, and then it's just going to be Orchestre M. And then we'll be all set. We'll finally be able to pronounce them. Yes, Yannick Nézet-Séguin and Le M. That's going to be marvelous. Anyway, that's not the point. Point is, this is some damn fine Sibelius. Symphonies 2 and 5. So far, his cycle has been really, really very good for the most part. He really gets this composer from his own perspective. And his perspective is an interesting one, especially these days, because his approach is much more of the Romantic school, which is really where Sibelius came from, which is really where the Second Symphony dwells, and arguably the Fifth, at least in parts. And, as I've said many times, conductors tend to fall into two groups. The kind that get the first two symphonies because they're kind of like Tchaikovsky, and the kind that get the other five because they've become more neoclassical and, some would argue, more distinctly Sibelian. But the fact of the matter is, you are better off dwelling in the first school, because the later symphonies can certainly stand an injection of romantic passion, but the first two cannot survive its absence. They just can't. And Nézet-Séguin has some interesting ideas, because of his approach, as to how the music should go. And they work. He does them well. They're smart. They're not like, I'm going to be different and do silly, wanton things just because I can. Not at all. There is a genuine process here, and you really hear it in the Second Symphony. Because the Second Symphony, despite being the most popular, is also the one most prone to failure. It's most prone to failure because of the finale. Somewhat, mostly. The finale goes around once too many times, and it usually just dies. It has horrible dead spots. Karajan killed the finale. It was disgusting. So, and here, it's like the best movement. The piece really culminates in the finale. It's like a miracle. Somebody finally, who's around today actually gets the trajectory of the symphony. But let's start at the beginning. The first movement is, as you know, sort of a pastoral kind of thing in Sibelius's very distinctive brand of sonata form, where all these little melodic fragments happen at the beginning in the exposition, and then the development, they build up to a big grand tune as they all get assembled in their proper order. Now, a lot of people play that first movement with really a gorgeous climax in the middle. This is a thoroughly pastoral interpretation. It's not too slow, it's not heavy, it's light, and it's rustic, and the final big tune is gently, with it. It's forte. Fortissimo. It's not like he's inhibiting it in any way, but he's retaining that sort of pastoral quality throughout, making the movement more preludial than it normally sounds. Now, this makes sense because the second movement is a really big, turbulent, crazy, with all the violence and tumult, and so it's logical. You may prefer a quicker, more rhythmically inflected first movement, but the second movement is very, very well done. The only thing that bugged me a little bit is in the opening, thing with the pizzicato basses all the time. He gets a little generous with his rubato at one point. It almost stops entirely, but okay, we give him a break, because the rest of it is really, really splendid. And very, very scary in places. It's wonderfully done. The scherzo is foolproof. You just set a tempo and hope the strings can hang on as you blaze through it. And then we get to the finale. that finale that usually dies 1,000 deaths. Well, it just doesn't. It has no dead spots in this performance. It moves along. The opening tune has that wonderful heroic quality. He gets the accompaniment in the timpani and trombones. You know, with the trumpets. It's really, really well done. And the end is glorious. And that repeated tune that repeats over and over and over until it just works. I can't congratulate him enough for giving us one of the few modern recordings of the Second Symphony, which is both distinctive in its own way. I mean, the concept is different from everybody else's, but really makes sense and follows the emotional trajectory of the music. I mean, you'd think it shouldn't be too difficult because it's pretty obvious where Sibelius is going, but conductors today just fail, and Nézet-Séguin does not. And the playing of the orchestra is quite good. Boy, have they improved, since their beginning as kind of, Montreal's community orchestra. Anyway, so that's the second. Now, the fifth is sort of a different kettle of beans because it's a much more tightly integrated and emotionally ambivalent piece. But I wouldn't say that the approach is the same. It's the same where it offers the opportunity for it to be the same. We'll get to that, too, in a second. But it's beautifully put together. It really is. I mean, all the parts that people usually screw up, the transition between, in the central climax, between the opening movement thing and the second movement thing. Remember, the Fifth Symphony began with four movements, which Sibelius compressed into 3 by joining the first 2. And he wrote this glorious climax that effects a tempo transition from the slow opening to the quick second half of the movement. And most people blow that too. It's really hard to do, but Nézet-Séguin just gets it. The whole idea is it accelerates gradually to the very, very final bar, the last 5 minutes. It's one big, giant, slow, gradual accelerando. And they do it, damn it. They do it. It's really cool. You really should hear it because it's so well done. I mean, the transition works, and then the tempo slowly increases. And then by the time you get to the end, I mean, he really has the timpani hammering the end, which you have to. Yeah. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Very, very impressive. The second movement is gorgeous, effortless. It just flows along. And then we come to the finale with the swan theme. And here's where that touch of romantic rhetoric really kind of does it. Because at the very end of that movement, the first movement speeds up and the finale slows down gradually. And that whole last sort of elegiac, warm, passionate effusion, he takes quite slowly. He really does. He really lets it build. And again, at the end, it's not since a Bravanel, of all people, have we heard the way that the timpani get the swan theme. Bum, 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 boom. There's four notes there in the drums. You really hear them. Wow, baby. First-rate stuff. And he also plays those final chords, which are always so problematic. He doesn't stretch them out unconscionably. He actually gets them somehow to hang together so that when the ending comes, it sounds like the ending, rather than something kind of gratuitously grafted on to those final bars. No, it's very, very good. And the sound is excellent, and ATMA has done a wonderful, wonderful job with this particular release. And if you like Sibelius and you care about these symphonies, you're going to want to hear this because it's really quite special. I was very, very impressed, and I suspect that you will be too. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.